Hello and welcome everyone. I hope you're all safe and well. Thank you for joining me today. We've got a really interesting lineup today of guest speakers. They're going to come and talk to us about the idea of using AI to generate items. Now, I'm going to welcome the guest speakers all onto the stage. If you could all turn your cameras on, I'm going to put you all on now. So there we go. And put me on as well. There we go. Welcome everyone. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for coming along. So this is the Test Community Network. If you've not been here before, we've got an amazing lineup of knowledge and events and a marketplace on the website. There's lots of information for you all there. What we're trying to do here with the Test Community Network is to really bridge the quite diverse assessment community and bring you all together on areas of interest which have common ground, things that we can learn from each other in our experiences. Now, I have a very international panel here, and we're going to hear from lots of diverse ideas. The idea of this webinar is it's a kind of a start to a research sprint. And the idea behind the research sprint is we're going to have a conversation here today. It's going to trigger some thoughts and reactions and questions amongst yourselves. We're not going to have all the answers. What we're going to do is we're going to take that forward. I'm going to explain a bit more about the kind of platform and space that works. But let's have the guests all introduce themselves. So Sergio, if you want to go first, and then we'll go around Carl, Mia, and then Neil. So do you want to say hello?
Yes, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Sergio Araneda. I am a research scientist at Cavion. Cavion is a company specialized in security, and I work as a research scientist there. I have a PhD in psychometrics and educational measurement from University of Massachusetts Amherst. And my background is in applied mathematics. I studied that in Chile, like a mixture between that and engineering. So yeah, that's me.
Excellent. You're in Chile at the moment, aren't you? So
correct. I am in Patagonia, very far away.
Yes. Excellent. So thank you very much. On the other side of, I suppose the other side, or nearly a little bit further around in the same hemisphere, we've got Carl. Do you want to say hello, Carl?
Good everyone. I'm Carl Hartley, based in New Zealand in Waikato. I guess geography, maybe Middle Earth might be the easier place for everyone to picture. I'm just down the road from Hobbiton, actually. I'm the director of AI learning strategy at Epic Learning. We've been really focusing on how do we implement AI in the learning space, in the learning development space. Spent 20 years in the field through working with corporates, through working in the vocation areas. Been really excited for the last 18 months. I've been leading the biggest research into generative assessments in New Zealand, and the report's just finished. So I'm going to be talking about some of my insights today. Just the highlights, guys. I'm not going to go into in-depth, but we are linking to the PDF. So you guys are going to be able to research and have a look and ask questions yourselves. It's 114 pages. It's chunky, but there's lots of good data in there.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Carl. That's brilliant. Mia, do you want to introduce yourself, Mia?
Good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mia, a fractional general counsel, legal consultant, advising businesses and organizations in the intersection of law, education and technology. I'm a qualified solicitor, and I help organizations to use tools like AI tools with confidence by turning complex privacy and legal issues into hopefully practical and workable decisions. My experience spans over a decade as an in-house counsel and chief legal officer for an international learning assessment company. And prior to that, I was a corporate commercial lawyer for a law firm advising on various international, national and regional startups and SMEs. And now I support businesses and organizations on everything from SaaS and technology contracts to data protection, AI governance, and commercial risk strategy.
Excellent. So Mia's here to keep us on the straight and narrow. Thank you for that, Mia. And Neil, maybe taking us on a slightly wonkier road. Introduce yourself.
Thanks, Tim. And that's not just because I'm based in Manchester in the UK, and Tim as a Yorkshireman is against that. Yeah, my name is Neil Wilkinson. I am the Director of Product and Innovation at Certiverse. So Certiverse is a company that specializes in taking what is relatively complex process of creating exams and tries to make it as straightforward and easy as possible for people to create psychometrically robust and reliable assessments. So before I was director of product at Certiverse, my role was at a company called Pearson, and we created, my role there was creating high stakes assessments. So I led the content development team there for 8 or 9 years, and we would create exams across basically any industry, any topic, any specialty. So we were creating exams from university entrance exams through to construction exams through to medical exams. It was a real wide range of exams. So I've got a lot of experience in creating exams. I've gotten through a lot of the pain of creating exams, and I now have a role where I'm trying to take some of that pain away from people building their assessments.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that, Neil. Thank you. So before we kind of get into the kind of meat of the questions, I just want to kind of thank you to Veretta, one of the sponsors for today's session. Please do below where you can see the feed, feel free to check out their website, learn a bit more about the organization. Anna and the team, award-winning, fantastic guys, and really kind of spearheading the AI space. You'll also see some polling questions coming up as well as we go through. I'll draw your attention to that. So we're going to kind of ask some questions about your reasons to be here. I also just want to draw attention to the website, just in case you don't know. What I try to do is build up a series of collections on the website. So these are pockets of knowledge and information and platforms around certain topics. So whether you're going to a conference, so for instance, the FAB conference was in the UK this week, I pulled together all the exhibitors there, and you can deep research against those organizations. So that's a very narrow kind of using AI to kind of go off and search through all those to find you out the questions that you do need. What I've also done with this, so like I say, we're not kind of stopping the conversation here. I've built a platform for basically this kind of idea of ongoing research. So the idea of a research sprint is that we're going to come together, really thrash out some ideas. There's going to be an opportunity for you to then asynchronously have a conversation using AI, but also looking at resources. So you'll be able to go and sign up and to the sprint. You'll be able to view details on there. As you go through and you add links in, add questions in, if you chat with it, what it'll do is anonymously take some of the insights that you're sharing and put those into insights that other people can see, and then they can chat against it. So the idea of this is a kind of rolling item going forward. We can pull together all this information. And one of my questions for you today is, what kind of guidance do you need on this? What is your kind of chief question? So you've got the comments option at the side. Please do ask away, either answering the questions amongst yourself, or as we go through, just we'll pause and we'll look at the comments and we'll try to answer some of those questions as well. I think that's it for my kind of checklist of everything to do. If you've got any questions about the kind of research sprint, if you want to get involved, what I'm looking for is experts to be part of that process. Questions are just as good as answers at this stage of the journey, because this is all still very new to us. We've got some people who've got some experience with it and kind of learned things, but it's all still very new. Right, first question. So to Neil, based on that experience you've had with working with test development teams, why do you think the idea of using LLMs to create items is just so appealing? What's the kind of the big draw there?
Yeah, good question. So I've been around in the industry for quite a long time. I've chatted to a lot of clients. I've done a lot of implementations. I've created a lot of exams, and in all of that, no one has ever said to me, and when I've been building exams, I've never experienced having too many SMEs as a problem. It's really hard to find high quality SMEs. It's always been hard to find them, and I feel like it's got harder. SMEs, even if you're paying them, it's really hard to find good people. If you're not paying them, it's really hard to find them. It's really hard to get people to volunteer their time. It's just really difficult. Some people love doing it. Some people just can't see the benefits personally for themselves. So the biggest issue in creating assessments, I've always thought, is finding high quality SMEs to create your content. We're also asking our SMEs to do an awful lot of things when we're asking them to write content for exams. So you want your SME to be a subject matter expert in the product in a specific area, and then in multiple areas, because you want them to review the questions as well. And then you also want them to understand the testing constructs and what makes good questions. You want them to understand the language that they're writing in and what makes people be able to spot the correct answers. You're asking them to essentially do 4 or 5 different things, not just concentrate on the thing that they're good at. So it's a hard job, and you're asking the SMEs to do a lot, and you're not paying them very much or anything to do this work. When I was directly building exams, I honestly thought that the key number was 3. So if you could find 3 really high quality SMEs, you can like rifle through creating good exam content. But just getting
what kind of size there are you thinking? What's 3 for what, 500 items or 1,000
yeah,
items?
I mean, it depends on the quality of the SMEs and how much time they can dedicate. But yeah, you could easily create hundreds of items with 3 dedicated SMEs. But finding those dedicated SMEs, even if it's just 3, is essentially a lifetime's work to find those good people. Because not only do you want them to be great at all of those things that I described and current with product knowledge, you want them to be available like all of the time. Like you don't want them to have other jobs to go to or go on holidays or have family emergencies, or because you need them to do the work when you need it to launch your exam. So not only do you need someone that's current with the product or the exam or whatever it is you're writing a question for, you kind of need them to be recently retired or just had a baby so they can dedicate like all of their time to your exam program. And you're basically looking for kind of a needle in a haystack of finding SMEs.
And but that's good. That's also going to affect their skill set, their knowledge, their expectations, isn't it? If it's only the retired people that are in their 50s, 60s, 70s or whatever, then that's going to make it quite narrow in terms of the content.
Yeah, exactly that. And then the other so the first thing that appeals about using AI is that it helps you create content when you struggle to find SMEs. The second thing is AI is a lot of things. Large language models, ChatGPT, whatever model you're using, it's a lot of things. One of those things is it helps people cheat in exams a lot easier. It helps people like copy your content. It helps people answer your questions. And so at the same time that it's appealing to use AI to write questions, it's because people feel like they need more questions because their content is more exposed in this new AI world. So it helps you. The instant appeal is that you can scale out your item development, organization, and process much faster because you can use AI to create content. On top of that, just last thing as well is I think there's a real appeal that it helps standardize things. Like one of the things you were looking to do in content development is write items that aren't like radically different from each other in terms of different styles, meeting your like house style about how you want content created. It's really hard to train SMEs to do that. And there's an appeal there that with some level of LLM, you can provide a prompt or you can train it to create content in a very standardized way. So I mean, that's only like 3 things, and there's a whole list of other things that are kind of appealing about it. But those are kind of three of the main ones that I like to think about.
Okay, so there's kind of 3 big obvious draws there, and I think feel free if people have got other kind of thoughts and feelings about that as to stick in comments. Let's see what else you're throwing. I'll kind of put those up as. And Graham Hutton's just asking what kind of items we're talking about. Are you kind of mainly talking about multiple choice there, Neil, or are you talking about any items?
Yeah, mostly multiple choice, although, that's just the testing industry's kind of obsession with multiple choice questions as kind of straightforward and simple to create. I know that people creating performance-based exams, though, have been using AI to kind of essentially help come up with ideas for them and implement them. So yes, mostly multiple choice, but that's really just because the industry is still like 95% multiple choice questions.
Yeah, and I think certainly I know from my kind of experiences over in American conferences, I asked the question, are you ever going to get rid of multiple choice? Because I see it as been a great threat really to security integrity as an item. But I know people just love them so much and want to go forward. Sergio,
just a note on that quickly, because I think it's interesting. One of the things that means that people rely on multiple choice questions is the SME problem, though, because you want people to create content quickly and you can't train them in like IT stuff. You can't train them in so if you can do that faster using AI, then it frees you up to create different types of content because it's just one less thing to train people on.
Okay, no, that's brilliant. That's good insight. So, Gail, from your kind of position as a psychometrician, are these models, I suppose, capable of generating good items from your kind of position? Is it matter if you've got human oversight in it anyway? What's your kind of view in it from a psychometrics point of view?
Well, in general, when it comes to the use of LLMs, I think there is some reasonable, justified belief that they can create questions that eventually can be used as items, just because they are trained in some way. That some of the benchmark actually that LLMs use are needing to create questions or respond questions sometimes. However, at Cavion, we are a company dedicated to security, and when we saw the whole new technology of AI, we immediately saw the opportunity there to create larger item pools. We knew that having more items is good for the security. We started to explore a lot with the use of AI for item generation, and the experience that we have so far about that use of LLMs is that your success will depend a lot on the information that you can provide or have to create the items. First of all, our research, and at least 2 or 3 pieces of research that we have done, is showing that the performance of an LLM is very contingent to the content domain. I mean, you cannot assume that an LLM is going to be good at creating items for any content domain. You need to be very careful with that. Actually, I remember once I heard from some professors that they were trying to take a test of a very, very specific topic, and they were saying that the GPT was actually not doing a good job at all. One very interesting thing, actually, that the use of LLMs for item generation is kind of showing us is that when you start to think about like what is the exact information that you need to provide for an LLM to do this job correctly, sometimes it's not just the content that you need, but it's also a lot of contextual information that you may also need. So, for example, let's say you need to create an item that is based on some scenario that needs to be realistic in some way for, I don't know, like a certification exam. You may have like your books having the content and saying like this is the right or wrong, but how do you know what is a realistic scenario that you can use for creating an item? And that type of knowledge usually comes with the SME, but you are not necessarily acknowledging that there is a piece of knowledge that they have that is important for item development to understand what is a plausible scenario or not, for example. So that type of information in some cases is essential to create an item that can be as good as an item that a human can write. And yeah, well, in general, also I think it's important to notice that eventually, given this need to be more explicit about the specific content that you're using to feed an LLM to create questions, or this other contextual information, actually you may do a better job that a human could do. Usually AI will require some level of human oversight and edits. At least the project in which we have helped clients to create items, we always have had humans editing the items. But still, I mean, there is no reason for why not believing that AI could, if you feed it correctly, to at least have a very good starting point. So in general, at least on Cavion, we worry about the comparison with human baseline, but not that much, because I think this technology can be evaluated more on the basis of like, is it creating an item that you can use or not, rather than compare with the humans what they were doing, because eventually you can do a better job, and that's fine. Well, why not?
Okay. I think one interesting point that was on there was the Jim mentioned about distractors. I know some organizations see it as an opportunity to use AI to generate distractors, whereas Jim's kind of arguing the point that they're actually not very good at that point. What's your kind of views on that one, Sergey?
At Cavion, we have a lot, very strong feelings about this problem, because in general, Cavion, we have promoted other item formats. We have a problem with multiple choice. Dave Foster, which is our CEO, I think it's fair to say that he's in like a personal battle against multiple choice items. He doesn't like them at all. And now over time, I think I start to see his point, because part of the problem, in my opinion, of why it's so difficult to create distractors is because the problem is ill posed from the beginning. Because what is a good distractor in the context of a multiple choice item? It depends in many ways of what you want from the item. There are a few criteria of what you can consider like okay for a distractor, but actually sometimes you may need a very specific description of the type of destructor that you need in order to have an item that you will feel okay with. So that problem from the beginning, I think, is not completely well defined for a computer to kind of like do a good job anyways. You need to be more specific. We have done experiments not with destructor but with the generation of correct and incorrect statements.
Right.
And we have seen that in general, GPT does a much better job on creating correct statements from some block of content versus creating incorrect statements. Our theory and our, I don't know, yeah, I would say our theory of why this is happening is because there are many ways in which you can create an incorrect statement that are not necessarily content relevant. So just because of that, you will have a problem in generating destructors, for example, because there are many ways in which you can put options that actually are not really content relevant. So now I've seen some research really trying to tackle the problem. I think at some point we will get it. We will be able to do it correctly, but we probably will need a lot of work and a more specificity about what do you want, and probably a more sophisticated workflow on how to create the destructors to do this.
And it is interesting you mentioned there about the models, because that is an interesting topic as well, because they are changing so rapidly, and a lot of the research that's been done out there may have been done on 3.5 or 4, which are now kind of, that's like the Robin Reliant of the 1960s almost in terms of the AI models that and the capabilities, isn't it? So Mia then. So I see the way I see this problem. I'm going to ask this poll question in the chat while you speak. So I'm just going to put it up there because there's this issue of kind of shadow AI. So the idea of someone using AI when they shouldn't do and all those kind of things. So I suppose there's the question of people using free models and people using paid models, and people then modifying the items and not modifying how much you have to modify an item to make it kind of yours in terms of copyrightable. What are some of the legal risks then around using LLMs to generate items? Wrap that one up in 2 seconds. There you go. You muted. You muted me. There you go. You found it? There we go.
Thanks. No pressure. I was saying 2 minutes is a stretch, but I'll do my best because there's a lot. There's a lot, but I'll be focusing probably on a sort of a three main legal risks which I advise businesses and organizations to focus on. Obviously, when we talk about legal risks in using AI, the starting point is that many of these risks are not necessarily entirely new. They resemble the risks that we face whenever we're procuring or deploying a new technology solution. So what's different, however, now is the rapid innovation in AI, particularly generative AI, and the LLMs stretching the way that actually existing laws apply. And that's why the space can feel a little bit chaotic for all of us. So the technology is moving much faster than the current legal frameworks are sort of around it. But those 3 questions that I get them to focus is, number 1, the ownership of input and output. So who owns and what? And this is obviously the question that everyone asks. And to cut the chase short, the honest answer is that laws currently aren't settled yet on this particular question. There's a lot of movement and consultations going to come and be in the pipeline. So most copyright systems are based and copyright protection systems and ideas are built on this idea that a human author creates something original. And AI kind of scrambles this because things get much more complicated. Who is actually in AI the creator? Is it the user who creates the prompt? Is it the organization who owns the process, or the developer who builds the model? Or could it be a situation where the AI actually, the material that's the output that's produced is not protected by copyright at all? So different countries, we've got case law coming up a fair bit. Different countries are already taking different views on the question of the ownership concerning those outputs. And some courts say that simple prompting doesn't make you the owner of the output, whereas more advanced, more innovative countries and courts are saying that if you apply enough human judgment and refinement, you may be able to get and claim that ownership. In the UK, the copyright laws do recognize a concept for computer-generated works with no human author, and has been for quite some many years. But what that produces in the AI context is quite interesting conversation, because depending how it's interpreted, that particular phraseology, the copyright owners, there could be many. It could be the developer, it could be the user who writes the prompt, or it could be a third party who authored the prompt. So the key takeaway, I would say, is that copyright ownership of AI generated content, it remains uncertain at the moment, and it really can vary depending on the facts and the country, the specific country. Copyright laws are country specific. And also we need to keep in mind that even if we don't necessarily get the copyright protection, or it might be uncertain, there may be other IP protections that can cover those output materials. The other ones, the number 2 is accuracy and bias. So, and this goes into more of the question of who's liable for what. And the third one is what happens to your data when you put that information into the system, especially if it's free or public one. You might not be in full control of where your data goes. So it could be stored, it could be reused, or even used to train the model. And that alone creates that sort of risk around confidentiality and data protection and privacy. So there are a few things that you can do to reduce the legal risks. And even while those laws are catching up, they will be catching up for some time, because the pace is incredible, what we're seeing at the moment. There's some foundational sort of levels of mitigations or steps that organizations and businesses can put in place. And some of those are very, very hopefully self-evident. And number one, foremost, for confidential sensitive material, please don't use free or public AI tools. Yeah. Because these tools often use your inputs to train the models and offer little to no protection. They're fine for experimenting, absolutely, and you know, not denying that. But for real work involving confidential, sensitive information content, I would be mindful of not using them. Second one, again, understand how the tool works. So be curious, look under the bonnet, you know, what's it trained on, how it stores your data, and how secure it is. And is it likely to hallucinate and produce biased outputs? So really being curious of what's under there, when I lift this hood, who can tell me how it works, so before you can start relying on it. And the third one really goes into using only approved AI tools, which most of organizations and businesses now have some sort of AI policies and strong data governance frameworks and procurement processes to procure tech tools such as AI. And I think what approved tools will usually, they will come with better enterprise grade security, clearer terms, and more predictable behavior. And then fourth one is also very important. Keep human authors in the lead, not just for reviewing and editing to maximize the sort of originality and creative input, but to check on those fairness and bias points, and tracking your prompts and edits to support potential authorship claims later on. And the fifth one is probably one of the strongest tools that we can have right now, and that's contracts. So pay attention to the contracts, checking on the contract terms for ownership of the input and output and what's included in the input and output, whether the supplier can reuse your data, and if so, how they're going to reuse it. What happens if the output looks too similar to someone else's work? So it's spitting out actually very similar, or if not same, output as someone else's. Commitments around security, accuracy, and confidentiality, and finally, any limits and exclusions of liability, sort of lawyers' hobby horses. And because AI evolves at the speed that it does at the moment, I would also keep these contracts strongly under regular review, just because of the pace, and hopefully eventually the lawmakers and they will catch up as well, and we have more clarity around this. And obviously, whilst these steps don't remove all of that uncertainty and risk, I do think that they create some sort of a very good foundational level or starting point framework while these laws continue to evolve.
Excellent. So, so just in terms of kind of some of them, so the further you kind of edit or own or interact with that item and have more human kind of control over it in terms of its process, then the stronger you've got a chance of claiming any kind of copyright on it. Would you say, or not?
Potentially, as I said, that hasn't been tested.
There's no kind of there's no 50-50, is there, or anything like that? There is no model for that. And I think if it's free, you are the product. There are different models out there. You can have take an open source, open weighted model and work on that locally. There are more services that are coming available for that kind of option. I think, from my experience on the models that are available, terms are changing all the time. Features are coming in that are being switched on by default, memory, those kind of things kicking it, and you don't necessarily see it. I think this is one of the question I had below. So when I say shadow AI, so that basically means that you're using an AI system. I won't know if who answers this, by the way, but if you're using an AI system within your organization or for your own work, where let's say you are using you would never ever use another AI platform that's not being given to you by your employer. Yes, you would, but you'd only use a paid app, or yes, but I'd only use a free one. Because I tend to find that from my experiences that people are dabbling with this, but they are doing it all with the free ones, which is where you see more of the kind of risks that are out there. Carl, I'm conscious of time. Do you want to kind of walk us through your project and tell more about your kind of experience and what you learned?
Yeah, no problem. Actually, great topics. In New Zealand, we have sounds like we have the exact same problems. Like, it's a universal thing that we're trying to solve here. So every point that we've discussed so far is like around the SMEs. It's not solved here in the Southern Hemisphere either. So what I'm going to do is hit some highlights of some of the research around what I've gone through, try and share some input and kind of relate it to what we've been discussing. The first thing is, with the research that we did around generative AI, there's a few problems in New Zealand that we have. A, assessments take too long to write. B, the unit standards or the framework that they need to be based on take forever to update. And then the third key pain point, which is a personal one, is that one size fits all. So if you're going to a vocation in the construction industry, you're getting basically the same assessments given out when they're being created. Not even mock exams, it's just straight up the same, right? So there's lack of variety. And here's a critical one, because I think this is going to resonate, is you either you achieve or you don't achieve. So if you get one thing wrong, you fail, right? So there's no grading system. So there's some complexities here. So we do lean away from multi-choice as a fundamental thing. And a spoiler alert, when I've gone to conferences talking about this topic and I get asked about cultural bias, the only clear form that came through was AI's loving multi-choice. And I'm now seeing from the UK and from the US a strong preference for multi-choice, and that's where these models have inherited it. I'm fighting them because I don't want multi-choice, right? Though that is a quick point just to talk to that. We did do some experiments around how to improve multi-choice. And if you're prompting, and you can set up variables within your prompt through tags, and it's a little advanced, but the idea is you can find what I call golden examples of a great multi-choice question that you love the distractor. And if you can put the right language to it and put the right tags to it, you can use that to feed your model to start giving more in that style multi-choice question. So you build up a bit of a bank. And that was one of our big highlights in our research, was by adjusting our research flow when we're creating the baseline assessment, we realized that an AI, so we were using Claude for this project, could produce 10 assessments in 10 minutes. But our reviewers couldn't do that, couldn't keep up with that. So we had to kind of fundamentally change the way that we approached our classic way of review, where your review, a peer reviewer will come along, try and resuscitate it and try and fix it and get it to the right point, and then you spend all this time triaging and trying to get it across the line. Now we can produce them so quickly, the opportunity's there just to throw it away and get another one, right? So we added 2 steps. One is a go, no go. So the engineer, I check that it's followed the prompts correctly and it's hit all the hygiene factors.
Yep.
And then either toss it or we move to the next step. The next step goes to a subject matter expert. And these guys were spending a week to review one assessment. We produced over 1,000 assessments in this research, 30,000 plus assessment questions. So we had to speed up the process. So while we were trying to discover the best type of questions to be asking the AI to get the best results, I told them just to ignore the bad ones. So the moment your eye sees something you don't like, just move on. But the moment you find one, you need to articulate why it's good, which is radically different to what we've done in the past, where it's more about you need to fix this, add this, change this. It's now this is a great multi-choice question because of this, and this district is industry specific enough for this, like really specific stuff. So you can capture that and use that as a variable to improve the next generation. So after 10 generations, we're starting getting some really good question framing, which is super exciting stuff. Again, in the research, you can look more into that.
Just one question on that. When you're using Claude, we use it straight Claude, or we using a wrapper app around it?
I was using the API, and one of the reasons why we picked Claude and effectively interviewed all the models at the time.
You interviewed them, didn't you, to find out their cultural kind of position, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, because it was more like there's a little bit of a vibe there when it comes to assessment writing. Like here's a style, and it also knew more about New Zealand and its latent knowledge. And when we talk about latent knowledge, it's what the AI was trained on, not what it's looked up on the internet, right? So you get to know its soul a bit about by just asking questions about New Zealand, what it knows about Māori and ethnicity, that type of stuff. What drew me to Claude is its back end has what's called a workbench, and that workbench has a prompt improver, so you can meta prompt and improve your prompts, as well as being able to have a back end where you can generate multiple assessments in the background while you're doing it, all built into the system. So the workflow is really quickly. So it was the API, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, and not a wrapper.
Excellent.
Well, yeah, it's Claude's wrapper, but anyway.
Yeah.
So that was so first step was to build a base assessment. And the idea was we built a general assessment because our next step was we wanted to see if we can pass the strict guidelines that NZQA, the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, have set. Can we ask the question is, can we now personalize that assessment to the user and to the industry? Another real problem is people are remaking the exact same assessments across the industry that could be the same. These health and safety modules that we have in New Zealand, they literally could be just mirrored, but everyone's making them from scratch, and it's really inefficient, right? Yeah. So ultimately, we made the baseline assessment, but I think I've heard us touching on this. The AI was good at creating the questions and given the right context, and with some prompt magic, very complex prompts, so I think I'm covered legally. But where it struggled is humans are just better at looking at a standard and a set of outcomes and planning the flow and the order of elements that you'll encounter. In New Zealand, that's more complicated because since we use long, short scenario, role play and observed, it's just the way our assessments are written. But that was really difficult for the AI to kind of build that structure. So we ended up using a human scaffold that it filled in with the questions in that style. It really struggled at it. I think these more modern AIs now could probably do it, but we had to draw a line in the sand because, model drift and all the updates really got us on that one.
Yeah.
We sent, and this is, I guess this is another key point, is we sent it through to moderation and it failed. We sent it to get moderated again to a different department and it failed for different reasons. And this is me going, well, how can we fail in two different ways and they're not consistent? And then what we realized is behind the scenes, there is another checklist that's not public. So my AI can't develop assessments to the standard that isn't public, right? And we've kind of always known that it's a bit like this, but because it was so manual in the past, it hasn't been brought forward. And since I religiously followed all the standards and the way it was prompted, it clearly highlighted the errors in the system that it's made for humans that can play in the gray. Well, an AI wants the facts, right? Or else it just hallucinates. So in a way, we've got a structure that encourages hallucination because it has lack of detail on what the criteria is or the rubric that's been used in the back end.
So just on that point, so humans reviewed the items after they've been generated by AI, but it went on to then fail the moderation. If they'd have written the items themselves, would they still have encountered that same issue?
Well, I got them to review it before we went through, so human okayed it, right? So
right.
Yeah, so
that's just oversight then, not editing.
Yeah. So this has gone through a normal peer review process. We got experts who've been writing assessments for 20 years. They said this lines up with what the information we have, goes off for review, and it fails, right? Where, like, is it just one of these things that could fail? One point though, we deliberately used a brand new qualification, which was a micro credential. So,
right.
And that was part of the reason we wanted to really stretch what we can do with the AI. I know we're tight on time, but some quick highlights. So we failed, but when we really dug deep, in order to pass, I would have to make a custom prompt just for that micro credential, and that wasn't really our goal. Our goal wasn't to make a prompt just for that one assessment. We want to be able to make an engine that's able to create different assessments. The next big thing is we started personalizing it. We use synthetic user data to protect any kind of privacy concerns, so we can really test the different models out. And what we discovered in the big wing on this one is that all the experts that we got to look at it from English as a second language and autism level 2, which is the two test audiences we went for, they loved it. And the key thing that they loved was that we added assessor guidance, where a lot of the assessments we have in New Zealand have to be observed. And this should be a no-brainer, but it was the first time that someone had assessment notes customized so that the assessor can have more idea that this person has autism, book a room that's quiet 30 minutes before work starts. And it was just little touches like that that got our experts really happy, because this is the type of things that aren't in our assessments right now. Allow extra time when answering questions, because they need to shift mentally the languages that they're thinking in, and understand that isn't lack of confidence. That is just the process, right? Huge wins on that, and that's probably what I'll say is the greatest win from it. And ironically, it was a hallucination that I spotted when I edited it manually. It was not prompted. So I don't know what the legal standpoint is. When you get lucky, the AI hallucinates something really good, then you add it back into your system. So that was my biggest surprise. Is my biggest finding in my research was when I was doing my go, no-go check. I went, wow, that reads really well. Who put that in the prompt? No one. It just hallucinated it. I'm keeping it and pretending I invented it. So our biggest find was a hallucination. So hallucinations are the creativity of AI. If you turn it off, you get none of the magic.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because Sergey, you're going to kind of touch on that a little bit. So up there in the QR code there is for the research. I will put it in the show notes and I'll share that out. I'm just going to give a shout out to Stuart Martin, who works with you on that project, didn't he, Carl? He's the micro credential king, kind of moves between UK and New Zealand. Please do check out his profile and do check out his work. He's an awesome guy, Stuart. He's been on the show before. Right, we're going to have a quick. That was fascinating. We're going to have a quick fire, very short answers on these guys, and then we're going to kind of go on to Sergio's kind of security side of things. So, how accurate are the items created? That's something that's kind of come up a lot. We've mentioned that. Do you think they're accurate or not accurate, or it depends? Varies.
I'll go. I don't want to say it depends, but I've seen and been involved in a lot of studies that show that it does depend on the content you're creating, but it's often as good as or better than first draft writers items written by writers. I think we all and Jim in the chat has made this point that ideally your writers are kind of experienced, drawing from their experience, they're crafting their content based on their knowledge of the industry, and that is all true. Like that's the aim. But the reality is that most people creating exams are struggling to find any SMEs, never mind like these perfect ideal SMEs. So the kind of reality that most people creating exams are is they just need the AI to be, and this is going to sound terrible, but they need it to be they don't need it to be perfect. They don't need it to be as good as their best SMEs. They need it to be as good as their worst SMEs. And that's kind of a low bar to pass. And that's why I think that study after study is showing that in lots of exams, content written by AI is at least as adequate as the content written by humans. That was a long, I know you said it was a short answer. That was a long answer.
And that's fine. Yeah, so you got a chance. Carl, do you want to chip in?
Oh, just real quick on there, and it's kind of reiterating what I was talking about. I've been challenging assessment writers to explain to me why their question is right. And what I'm finding is they don't really know. They just got a vibe, right? Like, so I think we can do a lot better way of going, this is what good looks like, and this is why. And then that will anchor us. And this really helps AI fill in the gaps. It's great at filling in when we give it a scaffold. If you just ask it to make it up, it's going to hallucinate and give you crappy results.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw in these other kind of quick fire ones because I want to get to Sergey's kind of research piece. So Sergey, if you want to share your slide in the chat, if you want to chat away and answer these, but if you get your slides up, Sergey, and then we'll get that up on stage. And comment away, is item difficulty ever an issue? I'll kind of add these in, and then over to you. So your slides are on screen. You're in preview mode if you want to go to our full presentation mode. And then if you want to walk us through what your experience with this. You're muted, Sergey, for some reason. Your audio's off.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Let me do this again. All right. Can you see my screens now?
It's gonna, yeah, it's on. Go for it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so at Cavion, when you use the API, at least with some of these LLMs, you see in general that GPT can repeat itself sometimes. So if you are requesting many times the same LLM to create questions, it's very likely that you will get similar responses at some point, and you have at least duplicates of items. And then we start to kind of like realize and think more about this problem in the sense that even if you're protecting your content or, I don't know, doing it the right way when you use the LLM, but if somebody, for some reason, has access to the same prompt and they independently request items to the same LLM, then how many of the items that you generated are going to also be shared by this independent person asking also for the same thing? So we did a few experiments on this problem, and actually we realized that it can be very complicated. We are calling all of this item pre-exposure, in the sense that when you use generative AI, eventually can happen that your item that you generated can be kind of exposed already, just because it's somehow predictable from the generation using an LLM. So what you see in the screen right now is the results of the experiment playing with different temperature levels. And on blue, you see our baseline, which is basically requesting an item pool of 20 items independently, in like doing that request twice, and see how many of the items are shared between these two item pools of 20 items. And in general, when you have lower temperatures, you can see up to 60% of like overlap between two independent requests of items when you use the same prompt. And in orange, the creative line is basically, we also included the possibility that one of the sides is adding something extra into the prompt, to make the creation of the item a little bit more creative, just to see if that could help or protect yourself from this threat. And actually, it seems that you can have some level of protection if you make your item generation a little bit more creative from the prompt, and you deviate slightly in the prompt from someone else trying to do the same. So yeah, in general, we see that also higher temperature can help into this issue. We also, in the generation of the items, we usually requested certain level of difficulty for the item, just to have like a more varied level of difficulty across the item pools. And we saw that if you request items that are harder, the possibility of having the items pre-exposed is also more complicated. So the harder the item apparently is making more complicated also to replicate the item. And yeah, well, we presented these results at NIRE and at COTS, and we are working more on this. These results are just by generating the item pools using the APIs. We need to continue this research with the generation through the web browsers, just to see, because it's a more realistic scenario, I guess. But yeah, this problem of the item exposure is kind of like tricky in the sense that spokes, because if, for example, you take an item this way and you pilot, then you will have a point of reference to say this item was exposed already. But it can happen that if you created the item with a low temperature and the item is kind of easy, the item may have been around just because people are using now GPT to study about your test, and they are not even trying to make anything wrong, you know. So that's a tricky thing. But also the conclusion of this is that you need to be very careful with your prompts. Try to be somehow original in your prompts. And in some way, this is kind of like pointing to the possibility that your test security is not, so it's going to be about your item pool, but it's also going to be about the prompts that you use. So probably the security of the prompt itself that you use to generate the item will become something relevant from a test security perspective.
Okay, what was the kind of reaction then from when you presented this at the conferences? What's people's responses been like?
A lot of interest, and people kind of like confused because I don't know. I don't think they were. I think people believe that because you were using the LLMs in this kind of like private mode, then people wouldn't get the same questions. But I think that was a misunderstanding in the sense that when you use private mode, maybe your data that you're passing to the LLM is somehow protected, but still the working of an LLM will be predictable just because LLMs work that way. So it's not going to be exactly predictable, but if you generate enough items, actually you can get a reasonable number of items that are overlapping. So yeah, that's part of the problem of using LLMs in general.
Okay, excellent. Well, so what I'll do is, if you got a link we can share for that research, have you?
I have the slides. I eventually can have that link. I don't have a preprint right now, but we're working on that. So, but yeah, I can share the slides of the presentation.
Yeah, as soon as that's available, if you could, what I can do is I can throw that into the research sprint as well, or a summary of it, if that's okay. I suppose the question to the audience, was while we're kind of wrapping up here, is, yeah, we're going to start this process, and you're all going to get an invite out to get involved and throw in your ideas, listen to what we've talked about today again. And I know there's some people that kind of registered for this and will be watching on demand because of where they are in the world. So I expect more to come from this. So I kind of just thoughts from you while we're finishing up here, just in terms of what kind of information are you looking for? A guide? Are you looking for a playbook? Are you looking for just a kind of list of experiences? What would be useful to you over time? Mia, I'm going to come to you. Just when people have all these kind of, from what you've heard here now in terms of work that Carl's done, from the work that Sergio and kind of Neil have talked about, what are there any kind of particular privacy concerns or any other kind of issues that are standing out to you that people should be aware of from a kind of legal point of view? I think just also to point out, there was a vast majority of people, when I asked that shadow AI thing, a lot of people were using free apps in there. So that is a problem. But is there anything that's standing out to you in terms of IP privacy, anything that's kind of last minute kind of thoughts?
Probably, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Yeah. Probably just reiterating what I was saying. I think a lot of this is being curious. I think it's not an easy topic to any one of us, and just to understand it, this is an AI tools, LLMs. They are all working slightly differently and different to previous type of tools that we've ever come across before. So I think we need to just be curious and really kind of, even as lawyers, to kind of step back and really kind of like, how do the concepts that we've been working on in the past, how do they apply here? We really don't have necessarily all the answers at the moment, as we've seen. There's copyright laws which don't, whilst they kind of recognize the computer produced works, they were made in a time when AI was not even existing as we know it now. So we're really living in an interesting times. But I think those are really kind of the privacy. And when I talk about privacy, it's more sort of the data privacy, the how does, and data does not necessarily travel as a straight, it's a different language. It almost gets transferred into a different language when it goes into the models. So and that's another interesting point that I was actually reading about today. To what degree do those sort of embeddings, the different languages that they go into the models, are protected with copyright and the ownership sort of as an input? And that kind of took me into, I need to go back into that particular topic and actually read about that and get my head around it, and maybe come back to you all.
No, but that's an important thing, because people don't necessarily understand. They go straight into ChatGPT, they chat away, and then maybe they come on across a platform that's using, like you say, you have to ask the questions in the solution as to how they work, so you understand all the touch points and where data might be leaking out to other places. Because I think, Carl, when you mentioned as part of your process, you had that go no go on an item that's been generated. Thought came to my mind: an AI agent could do that as a kind of task for you, couldn't it? It could look at that. A separate agent could look at that and go, yes, that's conforming to the standards. No, it's not, and kind of take that load off. And on that point, is if you were doing this project again, what would you change as part of your kind of setup?
I got too caught up in rigor. If I guess that, I really tried to make things work when it just wasn't working when it came to getting their AIs lost, and getting their AIs to do something that we weren't supplying the information from, and trying to make it work, and just getting into endlessly loop. So I guess being more flexible and realizing that models are going to be changing all the time as well. So realize there's another one coming out in a month's time. So don't overstress on trying to become the prompt engineering god. Actually take the loss, move forward, adapt to find what's good, basically.
Ethan Mollick was saying that, wasn't he? The new models are getting increasingly better understanding the intent that you have, and in a way, all you need to do is kind of share a bit of context in the intent, and it will figure the rest out. But there is still, I know, within these solutions, I know, Neil, you're kind of, as part of your solutions, you're looking at that kind of prompting side of things. How complex has that been for you in building the kind of wrappers, the tools that create this?
One of the interesting things is that I sort of feel like prompting might be on the way out, at least temporarily, because I think for a long time people were spending a long time trying to fit everything into a huge, massive, verbose prompt. And I think there's a lot more joy to be had in like focusing on smaller individual tasks. So to kind of break down to Carl's point, I think defining each individual like good thing about an item would lend itself to a more like asking AI to do small parts of the role rather than just try and do it all in one go. Now, eventually those things might just get chained together. But for instance, we've had a lot of joy in some of our research using AI to essentially take on a review role. So, you can use AI or a human to write an item, but then have a separate review where you're doing specific things. And that seems to work really effectively. So this is a very long way of answering your question. I actually feel like simplifying the prompts and making them much shorter and much more readable is possibly the way to go in the short term to put together something that's really effective. And that's kind of a model that we're moving towards at the moment. But to your point, this changes so quickly that this might be some terrible advice in 12 months' time, and it might be that we're all back to prompt engineering.
I know. Well, there's flexibility in that, and I think that's a really good point, because there's a temptation to say, right, I'm going to go off and build this most awesome, item generation tool right now. I'm going to spend all my time building this, and it'll last me for the rest of my life. But these things you've got to, and my playbook. I'm going to stick up the if you've not seen this already, I put the adoption playbook, so you can download the QR code for this and download the playbook. But building these things, there's 37 plays in that process. And you just got to work on the basis that what you're creating or working with now isn't going to last too long. So to Mia's point, you've got to really go through the contracts and go through the scrutiny and make sure what you're doing is accurate. But you could be looking at a very different situation in terms of the technology 6 months down the line. So you need to have a degree of flexibility in your approach and be prepared to adapt. I think also the kind of the idea of chaining together different models as well for doing different jobs. I like that's a good idea, and you won't get that if you're just going straight into ChatGPT and saying create me a multiple choice item. Here's the context to go with that. That is just zero shot prompting. That's just one shot job, isn't it? And you may do a bit of human modification. I suppose the advantage of using agents string together is that you could have different models that are capable of doing different things, and we're seeing that from the models as we emerge now. Google is an excellent one at learning. Claude is coming out as one of the top coders. ChatGPT is the kind of all-rounder with specialisms in different areas, and they are changing so much, and there's other fine-tuned smaller models that are available out there. Any last thoughts from you guys? Anything that you want to kind of say? Look, Tim's asked us all these questions, but I never really got a chance to get this one across in the last kind of dying seconds of this session. I know, looking at the chat, Graham's bursting for a glass of wine, by the way. He's talking about wine there. Anything that you really want to get across? Anyone? Last thoughts? Carl? Sergio, go for it.
Yeah, I think my last big important thought that I want to communicate, I think is important, is that when we use LLMs, it's very important to start thinking more rationally about why we believe that an LLM can do certain things. I think right now, in general, we have been using LLMs and crossing fingers that it's going to work. But I think there is a way in which we be a little bit more rational about this belief. So check on the benchmarks that were used to train the model, or dive more into how exactly an LLM was built or trained. Because you can learn a lot about, or you can have a proper expectation of like how likely is that you're going to do something with an LLM or not using that information. So for example, how likely is an LLM is going to correctly estimate the difficulty of an item? Why we would believe that? Maybe the LLM never was trained for doing that. So why we would believe that it can do that? Or maybe some other task is similar. We know that LLMs transfer learning from one task to the other. So entering into that mindset, I think is going to be very important in the future in the use of LLMs for item generation and in general.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Carl, your last thoughts?
Last thoughts, guys, is just remember LLMs are non-deterministic. So test your prompts, run them 10 times. And if they're all different, your prompt is very good. Don't just believe the first one you see. Test.
Okay, test. Excellent. Mia, last thoughts?
Let's keep these kind of conversations going on. I think this is absolutely brilliant. I think this shows that level of curiosity. I think the type of battles or challenges that I go through from legal perspective and compliance, those conversations will continue for foreseeable future. Let's face it, I'm not sure if I'm going to be here to witness the the end position and very finite answer to all of these. I don't think, knowing how laws and case laws develop on other areas of laws, there's hundreds and hundreds of years of case law behind us. I think this is just a phase that we're all privileged to live through. So let's keep the conversations going. It won't go anywhere.
Brilliant. Neil, final thoughts?
Yeah, my final thoughts is through all this, you still need to treat your SMEs really well, and you still need to work really hard to make sure that your SMEs SMEs are on board, engaged, and happy with this whole thing, because no one at the moment is saying SMEs are going to be removed from the process. What we're trying to do is make SMEs more effective and utilize the best parts of those SMEs. If you lose all your SMEs because they think they're about to be replaced by AI and the whole process is just going to be a big machine churning out content, then all of the things that we've talked about in terms of creating better items, creating a better review process, rating your items, doing all of the research will just fall apart. So as silly as it sounds, we should continue to treat SMEs as well as we possibly can, because they're still going to be critical for the exam creation process.
Absolutely. Play 3 in the adoption playbook is be AI forward, not AI first. So you got to think about the human in that process. Thank you very much, everyone. When we end the session, please do stick around. We'll just have a quick chat to us afterwards. But thank you for brilliant insights. Let's keep this conversation going. Join the research sprint, everyone. Get your ideas in there. Let's see if we can generate some really useful content for the community. So thank you very much and goodbye. Thank you. Cheers, guys.